By this time, the Kent and East Sussex Railway was only used by freight trains as far as Tenterden, and by summer-only hop pickers specials. It was, of course, destined to be preserved, the railway of today recreating the appearance of the rural branch line. The train is seen here at Northiam, the westernmost point of the preserved railway in the early 1990s. Again, 2 cameras recorded the departure. Stock from all the main constituents of the Southern Railway was employed on the train, very much in the tradition of the Kent and East Sussex. Water was taken at Rolvenden, the headquarters of the railway in its independent days. It was one of the famous Colonel Stevens light railways, Colonel Holman F. Stevens having built up a small empire of impecunious railways throughout the United Kingdom, of which the KESR was the star, where he had his office. With the passengers milling about the yard, the train was drawn forward so that the second terrier could take water. This caused a traffic jam on the main A28 road, which was crossed on the level here. The train then climbed Tenterden Bank to the terminus of the line at Tenterden. The railway had previously run beyond here to the main Tonbridge to Ashford line at Headcombe, but this section had closed in 1954, the date when regular passenger services were withdrawn. Back at Robertsbridge, the main train was drawn back into the station by the E1. This train was to continue on down the main line to visit Bexhill West and Newhaven, before returning to London Victoria Station. Top and tail working with terriers was common practice on special trains on the Kent and East Sussex, the hop pickers trains also employing this arrangement. As the E1 departs, the narrow coaches can be seen. This was because of tight clearances through the tunnels on the Hastings line. One of the largest and most famous docks railway systems in the country was that at Southampton, which was owned by the railways. Particularly well known were the Southern Region's USA class of dock shunting engines, which had been bought as government surplus after the war. 14 of these machines roamed the docks throughout the 1950s. There was a tremendous variety of locomotives to be seen on the dock system, which was still working at its peak. One of the Southern Region's Class 5 locomotives is seen bringing an ocean liner express into the docks, passing an ex-London Brighton and South Coast Railway E1060 tank, which is then seen at the watering point alongside a USA and another Brighton tank, a Class E2. Mainline engines were serviced at Eastleigh Depot, but the shunters had their own depot within the docks complex. Each locomotive's duties were denoted by a disc with a number on it fitted to the lamp irons. Southampton Docks was very cosmopolitan. No doubt the sailors of this American merchant vessel would have felt very much at home when they saw the Switches, or Class USA tanks. They'd been brought over to Europe as austerity machines and offered for sale as surplus to requirements after the war. Their very short wheelbase, easy maintenance, and comparative power made them ideal dock shunters. This engine was unique, being built by Porters, whilst all the others were built by Vulcan. The USA's were supplemented by 4 of the Brighton-class E2 tanks, which had a much longer wheelbase at 16 feet than the Americans at 10 feet. 32109 had arrived in November 1956. For John Adams' visit to Southampton was to film the radio-telephone cab-to-shore system that was in use to control movements around the docks. This was unique in Great Britain. The locomotives were equipped with whip aerials, radio-telephones and turbo-generators to provide the required power. The drivers at first objected to their loss of freedom, but were mollified when they realized that they had an efficient form of communication back to base. This meant they could get relief crews or remind control when their shift was at an end. In addition to the transatlantic trade, the Port of Southampton catered for much closer traffic. Channel Islands boats were met by Channel Islands boat trains, which were frequently headed by bullied light Pacifics. And it's number 34063 of the Battle of Britain class that we see partly in warehouse number 9. This engine bore the name 229 Squadron to commemorate the Battle of Britain heroes of the Second World War. Although registered at Liverpool, Cunard's flagship Queen Elizabeth was the most famous ship at Southampton in the 1950s. This magnificent liner, together with her sister ship Queen Mary, ran a weekly service from Southampton to New York, in competition with United States liners. So important was this traffic to the railways, even after the war, that a new ocean terminal had been built specifically to cater for the huge liners. This was considered to be a major project in its day. It had 2 railway tracks feeding directly into it, so that passengers had as little hardship as possible when transferred from ship to train. Special trains were run, usually with headboards. Lord Nelson's monopolized this traffic, and his equally famous King Arthur's were also to be seen on this work. Lord Nelsons were allocated to Eastleigh Depot principally for the boat train work, the named expresses being made up of Pullman stock in the case of the Cunarder and United States Lines trains. Also to be seen were trains for Union Castle and many other shipping lines, after which Bulleid's Merchant Navy class locomotives were named. .30074 was the last of the USA class, but 4 of them have been preserved.